Hello and welcome to the next episode of this city building Unreal tutorial series, where today we're going to be focusing on ploppable objects and creating a building that we can drag and we can actually place in the gaming world at runtime. So to begin with, you might have noticed I deleted the assets from the last video. I do want to make sure that I never do a lot in between the videos so that people who are following along as we go can kind of stick with what's going on. So all I'm going to do is I'm basically making those objects that we had into blueprints that I can just drag and drop. So I'm just going to create a new blueprint actor called CB building. Capitalize the U for no reason. Building asset. Open this up. And I'm going to have it's just going to have the default scene route. I'm going to add in a static mesh for it. The static mesh I'm going to use is, if we go to engine content and basic shapes, I'm just going to use the basic cube. Probably scale that up a bit, so maybe go 5, 3, 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to I want to make the root of this building the floor, so that when I do drag and drop it into world, I actually just like drags so the floor is at the base, rather than being like half in world and stuff like that. Just give it a quick material, and then we'll add the clickable component that we had in the last video. So compile, save that, and then go back to here, objects, and then I can like just drag those in like so. There should be, yep, they still highlight when I hover them, and they still click when I click them. That's good. Okay, so before we get properly into this video, I want to do a little bit of setup. Because doing ploppables, I do all my prep for this off camera. It wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. It's a little bit complicated. So to do some setup for this, I'm going to add some collision. I'm going to add one collision preset and one extra trace channel. So we'll start with the trace channel. If you don't know what a trace channel is, it's what Unreal uses when it does raycasts. So for us, we're going to be using a raycast to determine our mouse position in world. And we only really care about the landscape for that. So I'm just going to create a new trace channel called landscape. The default response is going to be ignore, because this will be applied to every asset in the game. So by default, we want every other object to ignore it, and then we only want to apply this to the landscape. So I've added that in. If I go back into world and just click on the floor asset, scroll down to the collision, you can see this has been the landscape trace response has been added. Set that to block, and then that means only our floor actually blocks on that ray trace, which is good. And then the other thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add a new preset for a collision preset for buildings. So collision enabled. It's going to be query only. I don't care about physics for my ploppable buildings, because if you've played any of the cities building games like City Skylines, there definitely is no physics on the actual buildings themselves. There's no need to be, really. So that's just going to be query only. And this is going to be our preset for buildings. We're going to click ignore for the camera trace, because we don't care about the camera boom. We don't want the camera boom to actually collide with the buildings in the world, because it'll cause the camera to start juttering around. We want to overlap world static. We want to overlap world dynamic. And then we want to ignore everything else except that. That's our preset done. So I can close this down now, and then if I open up my new building asset on the static mesh, I might need to close this down and reopen it. Oh no, don't. So just go to collision presets and buildings, compile and save that. And basically this means that I don't have to manually adjust every building going forward now, because I have this preset and I've attached it to this blueprint. All my buildings should behave as expected. I can still click on them, and my character controller still goes through them, which is kind of good. Right, so let's get started on actually making the logic we need to have something placeable in world. And my plan for this is, first I'm going to create a new actor component that's going to be city builder ploppable component. And basically this gets attached to actors that are in the process of being plopped down. So this will be done with a mixture of the player controller as well. I don't need the event tick for now. Don't need that. I'd like to delete everything when I create a new component and start fresh anyway. But we do actually need the event begin play. And the first thing I want to set up is just add a few variables in here. So the first thing I'm going to have is a boolean that is just going to be a constantly updated boolean that checks whether the placement of the current ploppable is valid. So if it overlaps with another building, then we don't want to actually spawn a new thing inside another. So we would have that set to false for that. So that bool is going to keep track of that. And then we want a ploppable material, and we want a invalid ploppable material. Basically, this is our UI representation of whether a material is allowed to be placed or not. So just set that to an object reference there. Do the same for that, because you want to represent to the player when they're trying to put something down and it's not in a correct position for that. So by default, we're just going to keep this as the green one. And then we'll set this to be the red one. You know, in the future, that's not right. In the future, I'm going to make new materials for this that'll probably be transparent as well, so that you can still see through the world and stuff like that. Right, this is going to be quite a basic component, really. So a lot of the logic is actually going to be done from the player controller rather than in here. This is just to keep track of the state of the component, really. So what I'm going to do is create a function called update state, compile and save that. And what this is going to do is we're basically going to get out if this so we're going to get our owner first. And then we're going to see if this owner is overlapping with other people. So we're just going to do is... Oh no, sorry. So we're going to get the other. So we're going to call get overlapping actors on our parent actor, on our owner. And then we're going to set that to actor, so we know to look for just other actors. And then we're going to get out whether. So if we do a length on the returned array. We basically know if we're overlapping anything. If this length is 0, so if we just do an equals to 0, and then we do a branch from that, then from this we basically know if this placement is valid or not. So what we're actually going to do is, the first thing we'll do is we'll drag off this node and we're going to set the is placement valid to the return value of that. Mouse undragged, there we go. I'm just going to move this further down. Like that. Okay, and then based on this, so I could actually just drag that in. Based on whether our placement is valid or not, we're going to set the material. So again, just using the get owner. We're going to get our owner, and then we're going to get all components, or get components by class. And we're going to get all our static meshes, static mesh components. Oh, we want components, not component. So get components by class. Again, yep, static mesh. And then we're going to do a for loop. So we're going to loop through each of the static meshes. Actually, we actually want to move that branch to the other side of here. We're going to hook that up to the for loop and then go to here. if this is true, then what we want to do is we're gonna set the material of the actor that we're attached to. If that is true, then we're going to set the material to be the ploppable material if our placement is valid. And similarly, we're going to set them to, if this boolean returns false, it's simply the invalid ploppable material. So drag that in, pull that into there, compile, save that. And that's pretty much it for this. Oh no, that's a lie, sorry, we still need to hook it all up. So again, in here, in event play, we want to get our owner out, and we want to bind to overlap. So we want to basically, anytime our actor begins an overlap or ends an overlap, so bind event actor end. So anytime either of these things happen, we want to listen out for that. So we're going to create a custom event that the overlap status has changed. And once that comes in, all we're going to call is the update state. Like so. And then just for good measure, we're going to start with an update state at the end of the begin play. Plug both of these binds into this event because they both run the same logic anyway, so that's fine. And the reason I'm doing this for both is because I saw someone online say that you could just have a counter that goes up when you begin and down when you end, but this can be a bit messy, so I'd rather just have a clean update state every single time we either start overlapping with something or we end overlapping with something. So that's all we really need to do for the ploppable component. We don't want to add that to our building. We want code or blueprint to do that for us. So don't worry about that for now. And the last area that we really need to focus on, this is where a large amount of the work is going to be done, is in our player controller. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to add 3 variables in here. The first one is going to be whether we're in the placement mode. In the future, I'm probably going to have a enum or a state to keep track of this, but for now, it's just going to be placement mode enabled. I'm going to have an actor reference. So this is going to hold an actor object reference, and this is going to be our placeable actor. And then I'm also going to have an actor class reference. And this is the actor class reference is basically what type of actor we're going to spawn in. So this will be placeable actor type, like so. So they're the 3 variables that you need. Just compile and save that. And what I'm going to do now is create the functions as well, so you know what functions we've got. So again, it's going to be 3 new functions. First one we're going to call set placement mode enabled. And then, so anytime we want to switch to being in placement mode, we're going to go through this function, and then that will set everything up that we need setting up. I'm going to have another one, which is going to be called, if it'll actually let me rename it, it's going to be called update placement. So this will only be called when we're in placement mode, and it'll be called on the tick as well. And then the final one is going to be spawn building. As simple as that. So the most complex one is probably the set placement mode enabled. We're going to, first of all, make it take in a Boolean parameter, and that's going to be is enabled. And then that way, we just need to call this with either true or false, depending on whether we're coming in or out of the placement mode. We can actually run a check. I'm going to rename that actually to enabled, rather than just enable. We're going to run a check to see if this is equal to the Boolean that got passed in. If this is equal, then we should return out early and not run any logic. It's better for performance, can't speak. And it's also better just to keep things clean and tidy. We only really want to run logic on state changes rather than every single frame. So if the placement mode is already equal to the isEnable mode, then we're gonna add a return, and we're just gonna early out of this function. If this is false, then we want to run we first want to set the new placement mode. Sorry, so if I pull off the isEnabled, and then we're going to do set placement mode enabled to that, like so. Compile, save that, and then obviously we're going to branch from this because we want to do separate things based on whether we're coming into this or coming out of it. So if we have just been set to the placement mode is no longer active, then what we want to do is we basically want to check if our placeable actor, which is going to be a reference to the thing that's kind of like hovering in the world, waiting for us to place something down. We're going to do an isValid check on this, just to make sure that it's actually there, because there might be a state where this isn't actually a valid actor. And if this is valid, then we want to destroy it. Simple as that, really. Compile and save that. I think that's probably all the logic we want if we're just switching to false. But however, if we are switching to true, then there's a few new things we want to do. So first of all, we want to spawn a new actor. And this is going to be the actor that is like present, dragging around in the world. I'm sorry if this is like dragging on this video a bit. It is quite complicated logic, so I'm trying to go through it quite slowly. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you think I'm going too slow or if I'm waffling too much. I'm new to this, so any kind of advice would be great. But basically, yeah, spawn an actor of the placeable actor type. And now another thing I'm going to do quickly is just set this so it has a default actor, which is going to be our building asset that we've created. So for now, the only thing I'll actually be able to point down is this building asset, but that's fine. The collision handling override, always spawn, ignore collisions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break a transform out, or make transform, that's what it's called, make transform. And it's just going to be a location that's like underneath the world for now, because we're going to update the position of the spawned actor every single frame based on where our mouse is. It'll make more sense once I show it a little later on. But yeah, so we've got our spawned actor. We're going to get the return value, and we're going to set our placeable actor to the actor that we get out of here. And then there are a couple of things we want to do. So if this placeable actor has a clickable component, okay, component by class, if it has one of our clickable components, we want to disable that temporarily, because that's going to interfere with what we're doing. So we'll do an isValid on that. And if we do have a clickable component, that's what we do need to change. There's a thing in Unreal where you can't destroy or disable a component outside of the owner of that object. So what we need to do is we need to go into our clickable component, and we need to create a new event. We'll call it a custom event, and then we'll call it in placement mode. And if we are in the placement mode, then we just want to destroy ourselves, essentially. So call destroy on there. Now it's a bit cheeky doing this, because you can only destroy a component from within itself or within the actor. I'm just calling an event on the clickable component telling it to destroy itself rather than doing it from the player controller, which I'm not sure if that's a very correct way to do things, but I know that it works, so I'm just going to do it, to be honest. So in placement mode, so call that on there, and then we'll get rid of the clickable component, and that's going to stop interfering with like our materials and stuff like that. So that's in there. And then after this, we want to add a placeable component. So if we grab out our placeable actor, and then it's add placeable, oh no. We're gonna add it's ploppable I put, didn't it? So we're gonna add our ploppable component to it, and then no matter whether it had a clickable component or not, bring those into there, compile and save that, and we've added that in. I think that's all we have to do for this function, and again, this is probably the more complex function. So just go over the video if I've gone a bit too quick for you. The next in line for most complicated is the update of the placement. It's not too complicated. Hopefully I've already explained it quite well, but basically we're gonna find where a mouse is pointing in world, and then we're gonna move our fake building around to stick with the mouse, so it looks like we're dragging it around, and then when we hit the mouse button to click, we're going to actually spawn a building there. So to do that, we're already in the play controller, we can just call convert mouse location to world space. That's going to give us these objects back, and we're going to do a line trace by channel. This is where the landscape trace that I did earlier is really going to come into play. So change the trace channel to landscape, and that means it's only going to look for things that are tagged as that are going to block landscape, and it's going to really improve efficiency, which is why I've done that. So convert mouse location to world space doesn't quite do what you think it does. The world location of that's returned by this function is actually where your camera is, because it thinks your mouse location is in your viewport essentially. So we want to put the world location as the start, and then to get the end, we need to get the world direction, which is the normal of where the mouse is actually pointing to from that viewport. And the best thing to do is just multiply it by a really large integer. So I'm gonna times it by 10,000. That should hopefully be enough. I think I've put 100,000 there, which we might have to change it to, but we'll leave it as 10,000 for now. And then if I just add those two vectors together, like that, and then we'll take that as the end point, and we'll compile and save that. And that's basically how we get the point in world. So if you break out the hit result from this, if you click this little down arrow, you'll get loads more information. We want to see if we got a blocking hit, and we only want to run the logic if we did get a blocking hit. So we'll do that, line that up, and if that is true, then it's quite simple. We just want to get our placeable actor, and we want to set the location of this actor to the location returned by the hit. So that would be location there. Compile, save that. And that is all we really want to do for the update. We're just using this to update the location. So again, quite easy. Let's go to the spawn building now, the last one. We could do the raycast again, but instead of doing that, we're just gonna get the placeable actor. We're actually going to get the placeable component out of this. So get component by class, because we want to run a check to make sure it is actually in the valid spot, and we've already done that, all that information in our ploppable component. So doing is valid. Apologies. Is valid on that. Just to make sure that this thing is actually ploppable before we try and spawn it. And as long as it's valid, we're going to get the is placement valid boolean out of it. And then we're going to branch. As long as the placement is valid, then we are going to spawn the actor. So again, yeah, we could use a trace for this, but we might as well just use the placeable actors location. So if we do that, get actor location as a transform, do a spawn actor from class, true, plug that. Oh, I suppose we can actually just get the entire transform rather than location. So get the actor transform out, plug that in there. The class we're going to spawn is, again, it's the placeable actor type. We've not changed that. Compile, save that. Again, we're going to just always spawn it, ignoring collisions, because buildings aren't going to interact with anything else. So that is completely fine. And then the last thing I'm going to do is, if we do actually end up spawning an actor, I'm going to set my placement mode. Can't speak again. I'm going to set this to false so that we can no longer place things down. And that's all you need to do in the functions. Outside of the functions, I'm going to do another begin play. Just as a test, I'm just going to set this to be, so if I call set placement mode enabled and just set true on there, this is just to test all our logic works. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom. I'm going to add I don't think this has the event tick yet, this character controller. So we're going to have the event tick. Placement mode enabled. We're going to get that out. If that is true, sorry, I need to do a branch. So if we are in the placement mode, compile that, then we want to update the placement. Update placement like that. And then another thing we do want to do is want to bind to left click. So when we left click, that's when we're actually going to spawn the building. So in fact, I just need to go to file, edit, project settings in the input. I've already added it. Mouse left click action mapping that is just triggered to the left mouse button. And then in the controller event, mouse left click. Every time this is pressed, again, we're just going to do a branch to make sure that we're in the correct state, and then we're going to try and spawn a building. Like I said before, all the logic for actually whether we can spawn it is handled in the spawn building function. So we don't have to worry about checking it outside of that. We can just call that and then hopefully it'll work for us. So let's see what we actually get with that, shall we? So I've pressed play. I'm already in the state, as you know, because I said it in the begin play, and you can see I'm moving my mouse and this building is moving alongside with me, which is really cool. Always going to the right location. It's looking really nice. And then if I overlap this building with buildings that are already in the world, it turns red to tell me that I can't. If I click, nothing happens. But if I click when it's green, I spawn a building like that. That's basically it for this video. This is the mainly functionality I wanted to get to. I'm going to, obviously, in future videos, when we have roads and things like that, because we want to be putting buildings alongside roads, this logic will change a little bit. But for now, that is exactly kind of what I wanted. And then what I can actually do just to check is, if I get rid of that, I don't know if this might cause issues actually, but yeah, I can. Oh no, it doesn't. See, I can just plop down multiple buildings over and over again, which is kind of cool. Okay, hopefully this video was useful for you. If you're enjoying the series or if you find this useful, please subscribe. I'm planning on doing these weekly. If you have any comments, anything you need me to go over, or if you want a look at some of the source, again, drop me a comment. I'd be more than happy to provide that. And yeah, I hope this video helped out. Thanks very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.